The silent descent the Crithani High Command did not believe in doubt. Across 17 conquered worlds, across 12 millennia of expansion, their method had never failed. They did not arrive with warships or demands. They did not announce themselves or negotiate terms. They simply entered. The neural parasites were microscopic perfection, invisible threads of living invasion, engineered across epochs to be undetectable, unstoppable. They rode on dust particles through open windows. They drifted in water droplets from morning rain. They settled on food, on skin, on the rim of a coffee cup left too long on a kitchen counter. And once inside a host, they began their patient, methodical work. First, the parasites reached the bloodstream, then the nervous system. Then neuron by neuron, thought by thought, they replaced the host's will with the collective's purpose. Within weeks, an individual would forget they had ever been free. Within months, entire populations would welcome their new masters with genuine gratitude, unable to remember they had once been something else. It was elegant. It was efficient. It left infrastructure intact and populations docile. The Crithani prided themselves on being conquerors without cruelty. Why destroy when you could simply rewrite? Earth was their 18th target, a blue-green marble teeming with billions of potential hosts, technologically adolescent but biologically robust. The preliminary scans showed promise: complex nervous systems, dense population centers, minimal planetary defenses. The collective's evaluation cast had classified humanity as standard conquest profile, low risk. The invasion fleet positioned itself in high orbit, cloaked beyond human detection capabilities. They would not stay long, just long enough to seed the planet, then retreat to watch the transformation unfold from a safe distance. It usually took between 8 and 14 months for a world to fall completely. The betting pools among the lower castes favored 11 months for Earth. The dispersal began at dawn on a Tuesday morning across 6 continents, simultaneously. Billions of parasites descended through Earth's atmosphere like invisible snow, programmed to seek warmth, moisture, and the electrical signatures of active nervous systems. They fell on crowded subway platforms in Seoul, drifted through open-air markets in Lagos, settled into the ventilation systems of apartment buildings in Sao Paulo. They found their way into schools, hospitals, homes, offices, anywhere humans gathered, breathed, and lived their oblivious lives. Commander Vexthar of the observation cast watched the dispersal data stream across his tactical display with satisfaction. Infection vectors were optimal, environmental conditions favorable. Human immune responses showed no anomalous activity. Everything proceeded exactly according to the protocols refined over thousands of years. Initial penetration, 94% success rate, his subordinate reported. Host integration beginning now. Vexthar allowed himself a moment of anticipation. Soon the first subjects would begin exhibiting the subtle signs: increased docility, heightened suggestibility, a growing comfort with thoughts that weren't quite their own. Within weeks, key government and military personnel would be fully integrated, ensuring a smooth transition of planetary control. Within months, Commander. The subordinate's voice carried an unfamiliar note. We're receiving anomalous readings from the parasite network. Define anomalous. Widespread termination signals. Sector 7 reports 82% loss in the first host cohort. Vexthar's 3 central eyes focused sharply on the display. 82%? That couldn't be right. Perhaps a local environmental factor, unexpected radiation, extreme temperature variation, some regional atmospheric quirk their scans had missed. Isolate the affected region and reroute. Commander, it's not isolated. It's global. The subordinate's limbs trembled slightly. We're losing them everywhere. Tokyo cohort, 91% dead. Berlin cohort, 87%. Mumbai, Mexico City, New York. The parasites are dying before achieving neural integration. The command center fell silent except for the soft chittering of data streams. Vexthar pulled up the biological telemetry himself, refusing to believe what his subordinate was reporting. But the numbers were undeniable. Parasites that should have been migrating through bloodstreams toward nervous tissue were instead being destroyed by the billions. Not slowly, as might happen with an incompatible host species, but rapidly, systematically, as if Earth's humans possess some kind of "their immune systems are attacking," someone whispered. But that's impossible. The parasites are designed to be immunologically invisible. Not invisible enough, apparently. Vexthar expanded the biological analysis, searching for an explanation. Run a complete spectrum analysis. I want to know what's killing them. The data that returned made no sense. It wasn't just immune systems, though the human immune response was proving far more aggressive than any species they'd encountered. It was everything. The parasites were dying from temperature exposure in human body cores. They were being dissolved by stomach acids when ingested. They were being attacked by the native bacterial populations that lived in human digestive tracts. Some were even being destroyed by chemical compounds humans consumed recreationally: ethanol, caffeine, capsaicin. On the streets of New Delhi, a woman sneezed. In Buenos Aires, a man took aspirin for a headache. In London, someone ate spicy curry for lunch. In Seattle, an office worker drank her third coffee of the morning. Each action, completely ordinary, completely unconscious, was a massacre at the microscopic scale. Billions of invaders dying in digestive tracts, expelled through mucous membranes, destroyed by over-the-counter medications that humans took without a second thought. The humans themselves noticed nothing unusual. Perhaps a slight fever here, a minor stomach discomfort there, the kind of vague ailments they experienced regularly and dismissed just as quickly. They certainly didn't realize they were fighting a war. They couldn't have known they were winning. But in orbit above, the Krithani were beginning to understand something terrifying. For the first time in 12,000 years, their perfect weapon had failed. The unnoticed battle, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her computer screen with mild irritation. The flu season projections weren't aligning with the actual data coming in from emergency rooms across the Bay Area. She'd expected the usual November spike. Congestion, fever, body aches, the work. Instead, she was seeing something odd, a brief 24-hour pattern of low-grade fevers and mild gastrointestinal distress that resolved without treatment. Probably just a weak strain, her colleague muttered, refilling his coffee mug for the fourth time that afternoon. People's immune systems are handling it before it becomes a real problem. Sarah nodded absently, already moving on to the next report. She had actual diseases to worry about, not phantom bugs that disappeared before anyone could even culture them properly. Within an hour, she'd forgotten about the anomaly entirely. She didn't know that her immune system had just eliminated 3,000 neural parasites while she ate her lunch. The capsaicin in her sriracha sauce had burned through their cellular membranes, like acid. Her white blood cells had mopped up the survivors with ruthless efficiency, cataloging them as just another foreign invader and a lifetime of foreign invaders successfully repelled. Across the planet, humanity continued its day with the same oblivious competence. In the Krithani observation vessel, panic was setting in. 96% mortality rate. Vexthar's voice had lost its earlier confidence. Across all deployment zones, the second wave performed no better than the first. How is this possible? Demanded High Architect Zelnoth, who had materialized via quantum link from the fleet's primary vessel. Her form shimmered with agitation. These parasites have conquered 17 worlds. 17. We've infected species with advanced immune systems, species with chemical-based defenses, species with body temperatures that should have incinerated our organisms. And yet humanity, these technologically primitive, war-obsessed creatures, is destroying them by accident. It's not any single factor, Vexthar explained, pulling up the cascade of failure analyses. It's the combination. Their baseline body temperature runs higher than 68% of species we've encountered, hot enough to stress the parasites before they can establish neural anchors. Their immune systems are hypervigilant, likely evolved in response to their planet's aggressive bacterial and viral diversity. And their dietary habits. He gestured to a data stream that showed the sheer variety of substances humans routinely ingested. They consume toxins recreationally. They've domesticated plants specifically bred to produce chemical irritants, then eat them for pleasure. This one, he highlighted capsaicin, registers as a neurotoxin to our parasites, and they put it on everything. What about the subjects who avoid these irritants? Zelnoth pressed. Surely some percentage of the population dead from bacterial interference. Vexthar pulled up the microbiome analyses with something approaching awe in his voice. Humans are not individuals, architect. They're ecosystems. Each one carries trillions of native bacteria that compete aggressively with any foreign microscopic life. Our parasites can't establish themselves because they're being outcompeted by organisms that have evolutionary claim to the territory. A junior analyst spoke up hesitantly. There's also the matter of their medications. We've identified over 200 common pharmaceutical compounds that prove fatal to the parasites. Compounds they consume routinely for minor ailments, headaches, inflammation, allergies. One subject eliminated an entire parasite colony by taking what they call aspirin for back pain. The command center absorbed this information in stunned silence. So we're telling the Grand Collective, Selnath said slowly, that Earth's dominant species has defeated our invasion using spicy food and headache medicine. And coffee, added the analyst miserably. The caffeine appears particularly devastating to neural integration attempts. On Earth, Marcus Johnson grabbed his third espresso of the day from the campus coffee cart. He was cramming for a biochemistry exam and needed all the help he could get. The bitter liquid coursed through his system, sharpening his focus, steadying his thoughts. In his bloodstream, the few parasites that had survived his morning ibuprofen dose began dying immediately. The caffeine molecules disrupted their cellular signaling, sending them into fatal spasms. His liver processed the microscopic corpses without fanfare, breaking them down into component proteins that would be recycled or excreted. Marcus never felt a thing. He was too busy memorizing the Krebs cycle to notice that his body was running a Krebs cycle of an entirely different sort, one that processed alien invaders alongside yesterday's pizza. He burped, tasted garlic, and returned to his textbook. We could increase the concentration, suggested one of the Crithani tactical specialists. Overwhelm their defenses with sheer numbers. We tried that in the third wave. Vexstar pulled up the data with a gesture that conveyed profound weariness. We increased parasite density by a factor of 50. The human immune systems responded by getting slightly better at killing them. It was like watching them practice. Their bodies learned from each exposure, refined their responses, became more efficient at elimination. Adaptive immunity, breathed the medical cast observer. Of course. It's not just that they're killing the parasites. They're getting better at it with each attempt. By our fifth deployment wave, average parasite survival time had decreased by 43%. We're training them to destroy us more effectively. Zelnath made a gesture equivalent to rubbing temples in frustration. Options. I need options. We could attempt thermal parasites, Vexstar offered without much hope. Engineered to tolerate higher core temperatures. Development time. 18 months minimum. And that's assuming we can solve the immune system problem, the bacterial competition problem, and the dietary toxin problem simultaneously. What about bypassing the biological route entirely? Direct neural interfaces, mechanical infiltration. Their technology is too primitive for sophisticated neural ports, but too advanced for us to introduce them without raising suspicion. And mechanical infiltration would require physical facilities, infrastructure, a presence they would definitely notice. Zelnath's form flickered with what might have been dark amusement. So we're reduced to the crude option. Military invasion. Boots on the ground, as the humans say. Against a species of 8 billion that just fought off our most refined bioweapon without noticing. Vexstar let the implication hang in the air. A species that apparently weaponizes their food, lives in a constant state of low-level chemical warfare with their own planet, and has immune systems that treat our engineered parasites like routine maintenance. Below them, Earth continued spinning, blissfully unaware. In Tokyo, a salaryman took antacids for indigestion, killing another 1,000 would-be invaders. In Cairo, a street vendor added extra chili to a customer's koshery. In Stockholm, someone swallowed allergy medication before bed. Each action, mundane and unremarkable, was a small victory in a war humanity didn't know it was fighting. And in orbit, the Crithani faced a decision that terrified them more than any they'd made in millennia. Retreat from an inferior species, or risk open conflict with creatures who had defeated them by simply being alive. The horrible realization the Grand Collective convened in the quantum chamber, a space where 17 world minds could manifest simultaneously, The Krithani did not hold emergency sessions lightly. Their governance operated on geological timescales, patient and deliberate. But Earth had forced their hand. Zelnoth presented the data without embellishment. There was no point in softening the truth. The holographic display showed Earth rotating peacefully below their fleet, utterly ignorant of the crisis unfolding in orbit. She began with the numbers, 7 distinct deployment waves, each more concentrated than the last. Cumulative parasite losses approaching 99.7%, 0 successful neural integrations, 0 compromised hosts. Impossible, declared the world, mind of Krithus Prime, eldest of the collective. Show me the immune response data, Zelnoth complied. The chamber filled with cascading biological telemetry, fever responses, white blood cell mobilization, antibody production curves. The world minds absorbed the information in silence. This is aggressive, one observed, but not unprecedented. And I'm there. The Vorthan species on World 9 had similar immune vigor. The Vorthans fell in 13 months, Zelnoth replied quietly. Should I show you why humanity is different? She pulled up a split-screen comparison. On one side, a Vorthan host body, temperature regulated at a comfortable 28 degrees Celsius, consuming a bland diet of cultivated proteins, living in a carefully controlled environment. On the other, a human, core temperature of 37 degrees Celsius, consuming something called ghost pepper wings, while drinking ethanol-laced beverages in a crowded bar, exposed to thousands of potential pathogens from fellow humans pressed shoulder to shoulder around them. The Vorthans were gardeners, Zelnoth continued. Humanity is I don't have a proper classification. They're survivors from a death world who somehow convinced themselves they live on a paradise. She expanded the display. Earth's environmental diversity is extreme. Temperature ranges that span over 100 degrees Celsius from pole to equator. Atmospheric oxygen levels that would be toxic to 4 of our member species. A bacterial and viral diversity that suggests constant, aggressive evolutionary warfare, and humanity evolved to Show me their dietary analysis again, requested the world, mind of Vexthus. The data materialized. Thousands of compounds humans routinely ingested. Capsaicin, piperine, allicin, ethanol, caffeine, theobromine. The list went on. Each one ranged from mildly harmful to outright toxic to Krithani parasites. They're not just eating food, the Vexthus mind said slowly. They're eating weapons. Why would a species do this? Flavor, Vexthar answered, having spent the last 48 hours becoming humanity's most reluctant expert. They find the sensation pleasurable, the burning, the bitterness, the chemical sting. These are desirable traits in their cuisine. Masochistic, someone muttered. Adaptive, corrected another. They evolved alongside these compounds. What's toxic to us is recreational to them. It's not that they're unusually strong. It's that we're attempting to invade a species we're biochemically incompatible with. Dr. Yuki Tanaka rubbed her eyes and reached for her coffee. Her 6 cups since starting her shift at Tokyo General Hospital. The overnight emergency room had been unusually quiet. A few cases of mild fever and nausea, all resolved within hours. Nothing interesting. Nothing worth outing in detail, 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 outing in detail. She didn't know that she was the single most lethal human on the planet at that moment. Her coffee consumption had reached levels that would hospitalize most people. Combined with the extra spicy ramen she'd eaten at 2 a.m., the ibuprofen she'd taken for a tension headache, and her body's natural immune response, she was essentially a walking extinction event for Krithani parasites. The 8th deployment wave had specifically targeted healthcare workers, hoping to compromise key personnel who might eventually notice the invasion. Dr. Tanaka had personally eliminated roughly 43,000 parasites in the last 6 hours, simply by existing. She yawned, made a note about the mild viral cluster in her log, and moved on to the next patient. We need to discuss military options. The world mind of Krexler spoke with the authority of one who commanded the collective's defense fleets. If biological infiltration has failed, we proceed to conventional conquest. Against 8 billion hostiles, Zelnoth challenged. Have you analyzed their military capacity? Primitive projectile weapons, crude nuclear fission devices, no orbital defense platforms. Our shields would render their weapons ineffective. Would they? Vexar pulled up new data. Humanity's warfare history. The chamber grew quiet as they witnessed Earth's incomprehensible violence. 2 global wars in a single century. Weapons capable of planetary devastation, held in check by nothing but mutual fear. Nations with thousands of nuclear warheads aimed at each other, maintained in a state of permanent near-launch readiness. They've nearly destroyed themselves 12 times in the last 80 years. Vexstar And they keep choosing not to. Not because they can't, but because they collectively decide not to. That's not primitive. That's terrifying restraint from a species that clearly knows how to commit apocalyptic violence. You're saying they're more dangerous than their technology suggests. I'm saying their technology undersells their lethality. Vextar highlighted a human military doctrine called mutually assured destruction. They built weapons capable of ending their own civilization, deployed them globally, pointed them at each other, and then just lived with it for decades. What kind of species does that? One that's comfortable with existential risk, someone said quietly, or one that's insane, offered another, perhaps both. Vextar pulled up more data. They've militarized everything. Their entertainment simulates warfare. Their sports involve controlled violence. Their children play games about combat. They're a species that thinks about fighting constantly, practices it recreationally, and has spent their entire technological development preparing for it. Four-year-old mind of Krexler studied the military readiness assessments with growing unease. What happens if we land ground forces? Best case scenario. Protracted guerrilla warfare across multiple continents with a population that outnumbers our entire species 2 to 1. Worst case? They unify against us and deploy those nuclear weapons they're so fond of. Not against each other this time, against us. They'd irradiate their own planet. They've already done it. Multiple times. For testing purposes. Vexstar let that sink in. They poisoned their own atmosphere to see how big an explosion they could make. And when they weren't satisfied with the size, they made bigger ones. In Washington, D.C., General Patricia Morrison reviewed satellite imagery of unusual orbital formations. Something was up there, lurking beyond their detection capabilities' edge. The images were fuzzy, probably just space debris or satellite reflections, but her instinct said otherwise. She'd survived 3 wars and countless near misses by trusting those instincts. "Get me NORAD," she said quietly, and start warming up the contingency protocols. She didn't know what was up there, but humanity hadn't survived this long by assuming the best. The grand collective debate had been running for 6 hours. An eternity by their standards. "We could simply leave," suggested the world. Mind of Pelthus, mark this system as incompatible and move on. And let it spread that the Crithani fled from a primitive species. Krexter's form blazed with indignation. Our reputation across 7 sectors would collapse. Every species we've conquered would begin questioning our authority. "Better questioned authority than military defeat," Zelnoth said, "because that's what we're discussing. Not whether we could win a war with humanity, but whether we could survive one. These creatures fought off our invasion without noticing. What happens when they're actually trying?" The chamber fell silent. On the display, Earth continued its rotation. 8 billion humans going about their day, eating their toxic foods, drinking their legal poisons, carrying their invisible bacterial armies, completely unaware that they'd just accomplished what no other species in Crithani history had managed. Total. Effortless victory over the collective's most refined weapon. Recommendation, the eldest world mind finally pronounced. We withdraw immediately. We classify Earth as a level 5 incompatible zone and prohibit all future contact. "And if they develop faster than light travel?" someone asked. "If they come to us," the eldest mind considered this with something approaching dread. "Then we hope," it said slowly, "that they're more diplomatic than their history suggests, because a species that fights off invasions by drinking coffee is not one we want as an enemy." The vote was unanimous.